Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic, and welcome to this very special report entitled "This Time It's Different" with Andy SCHECTMAN, and of course, BIX WEIR. You can find Andy at milesfranklin.com, and of course, BIX at roadtoruta.com. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show.
Good to be
Yay! Here. Happy to be here.
Bixie, always good to see you, brother.
You
How are you guys doing?
I like keeping you busy, and I like keeping both you guys busy. I've been sitting on my hands because I've been on YouTube lockdown for 2 weeks, so it's been a nice vacation.
Hey, what the hell happened?
As hard as YouTube guys, a little bit of a break is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a second strike? A first strike? Second strike? Where are you at?
The second strike was from a video I did 3 years ago about silver manipulation. First time they've ever given me a strike on talking about manipulation. They could go through every single one of my videos and give me 1,000 strikes if they wanted.
Yeah, man.
So
you're this close from joining the repeat offender club.
No, I won't do it.
They give you a strike on a video you did 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep. That makes sense.
And it was a private road video. I used to post all the private road videos on YouTube because they weren't censoring as much 3 years ago. So I've just forgotten about them. And it wasn't in the title or anything. It's just they went, I don't know. I'm sure they've got things in their pocket if they want to slow you down a little bit, what you're exposing. So, yeah. And my first strike was just about to expire. It just expired yesterday. So I started again. But I mean, you know, when Clip was talking way back when about how censorship was coming and the language is being suppressed, he noticed it before the censorship came, before people knew about it. And it's so crazy to think back 3 years ago, the things I was talking about, and then today, the things you can't talk about. It's really sad to see the devolution of our social media systems.
Absolutely. Hey, Bix, before we go too far, you seem to be overdriving your microphone. Can you bring your mic gain down just a little bit?
Story of my life. Absolutely. How's that?
It's much better. Hold on. Oh, can't take you now. All right. All right. And Andy, how are you, man? You look tired still. What's going on?
Yeah, you guys, I've done this for 31 years. I'm honest to God, I've never experienced anything like it. I wish people could sit. I mean, look, it's a blessing, you know. Like Vic said, stop whining. I'm not whining. I just you get up, you're on the phone at 7 in the morning, and it's bang, 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 bang all day long. I could be on the phone all night long. There are people, you know, in the title of this video, why is it different? Here's one of the reasons why it's different. People are really freaking out, and we are getting an expansion into the mainstream. People who wouldn't know a gold coin or a silver coin if it fell on their foot now are all of a sudden very frightened. And, you know, there's a million reasons why, of course, but that's different. I spoke at a family office. I was asked to speak at a family office event 2 weeks ago. That's different. The expansion into the mainstream, instead of just us, you know, tinfoil hat wearing hard money people, is now expanded greatly, and it's keeping us hopping for sure. 2 weeks ago, we sold 600,000 ounces of silver, to give you an idea of what it's really like. If someone would have bet me $1 million that we'd sell someday 600,000 ounces in a week, I'd really have to think hard about taking that bet, because those are just numbers that would have seemed impossible at one point. People are freaking out. Getting product is getting harder, and honest to God, I don't believe you've seen anything yet.
Okay, well, that's a good introduction. Of course, yes, today, folks, I thought I'd bring the banker and the ex-banker, one foot in both worlds here, into crypto and into sound hard money and physical gold and silver, in for a conversation, because this was all, I guess the concept of it's different, or this time is different, came to me in an episode with Cliff High and David Morgan. That was the Silver Woo report. And if you guys want to see that episode, it's on BitChute, on my BitChute channel. But I asked both of those gentlemen why it was different. And we had so much great feedback of people telling me, man, we finally got it. Now we understand what you guys are talking about. Like, it made sense to them. And much to my chagrin, there was a lot in that conversation that can't be repeated here on YouTube. So that video is still on BitChute. But I thought we can navigate here the conversation for you guys on YouTube and explore a little bit more in depth why this time it's different. So Bix, let me start with you here. Andy just gave us a great introduction to that, and I know you've been doing your homework as well, and you've been pumping all of this material on roadtoroota.com. But in your view, give me one point, and I'll go back and forth between you and Andy here to share the time with the audience here. But what's your maybe top three, but start with your first one of why it's different this time. All right. Okay, Bix did his homework. I love it.
I did my homework as to why I think it's different. And I framed it different between the other times we're trying to take out the silver riggers. The number one in my lifetime was the Hunt brothers back in the 1980s. Yes. How is it different between now and then? Oh my God, let me count the ways. There was 3 billion ounces in government hands back then. Now there's nothing in government hands. But the big difference, one, the DOJ finally, it wasn't a regulator, but the DOJ came down on JP Morgan and Friends for rigging the silver market. That should be number one in everybody's mind, because they also signed a deferred prosecution agreement, meaning they can't continue to do this. So them and their partners, and that were named, ultimately used to be Bank A, Bank B, Bank C, Bank of America, Scotiabank, UBS. They were all charged on RICO charges for conspiring to commit financial crimes. That's one thing that's very different. So they're not in the game anymore, and anybody who thinks about doing the same thing is going to look at the same treatment if we get a decent president. And number two,
okay, hold on. Don't go too fast. That's a big one you just said there, because for a lot of people who are just coming out maybe of mainstream media and they're searching for alternative media and they're here on my YouTube channel, what you just said, up until then, it was complete conspiracy theory, hogwash, tinfoiler hat, blah, blah, blah. And now here we have RICO charges, big fines. This is now conspiracy fact. And so more and more of these are coming to light here, hours and days as they go by. So that's a big one. Okay, Bix, keep going.
Number two is that we are currently in a position where the commercial shorts are sitting on losses. And they're huge losses, in $8 to $10 billion in losses in gold and silver shorts that Ted Butler has been tracking. That hasn't happened since the CFTC started back in the early 70s. So they've always made money on their shorts, and now they're sitting on these gigantic losses. That would be number two. That is a big deal, because all these people have boards of directors they have to answer to, compliance people they have to answer to, their paycheck. If they're going to lose billions of dollars trading gold and silver as a commercial too big to fail bank, why are they trading gold and silver? I like to ask, why are they trading it anyway? Why are they allowed to trade it? But that's a huge deal that they're sitting on losses. So another reason that they're going to be going away is it's not profitable anymore. That would be number two. I'll go just fly through them if you want, or you can comment.
Keep going.
Since JP Morgan got out of its silver short position on the COMEX, all the commercial banks are trying to get out of their short positions. JP Morgan just beat them to the punch. All of them are trying to get out. They're looking at one of the lowest ever commercial short positions right now, which is great. But they're having a hard time finding someone to take over that short position, because they're kind of out of dummies. The dumb money is pretty much gone in silver. Number four, and there's only 6 of them, so I'll fly by. It's easier to buy silver than it has been in the history of the world. You can buy it online. You can buy it in an ETF. You can buy it at a metal storage place. Remember, in 1980, the Hunt brothers didn't have the internet. They didn't have all these people talking about silver. They didn't have online buying of silver. Retail buyers can buy silver easier than ever before. And you can contact Andy at milesfranklin.com to get your physical silver. Number 5, and I'm almost done. The internet exposure of price manipulation is all over the place. This was a hidden secret not even 10 years ago. I was called a conspiracy-minded person. My friends at Gatto were called conspiracy-minded people, and they were called a lot worse by guys like Jeffrey Christian, who still today are running around saying there's no conspiracy and price suppression, even though the DOJ came out and busted all his friends and clients. Mm-hmm. So the internet exposure about price manipulation, everybody knows what is going on now, and it's beautiful. And then finally, there's more money being printed now than ever in the history of the world. There's more investors now ever in the history of the world looking for returns, where you look around, you can't get good returns. And you look at the silver story and you're like, oh my God, why isn't silver trading at $1,000 an ounce? That's another reason money's going to flow into. And then number 7, I added one more while we were thinking. Cryptos. We have cryptos now, so the powers that be can let gold and silver manipulation end. They can let gold and silver manipulation be freely traded, because if you want monetary money other than the US dollar, you got cryptos to run into. Please, for God's sake, finally release gold and silver from price manipulation. You don't have to keep the system going anymore. Let the gold and silver investors reap what they have sown. Profit from their smart decision to get physical gold and silver. In my case.
Okay, very good. Let me bring up one point you just made there too. That's very important, and Cliff was alluding to this in his reasons why this time it's different in the last show. And he mentioned that the powers that be no longer have full control of their propaganda machine. It's breaking down everywhere, so they cannot continue to hide the information they want to hide and push forward the propaganda they want to sustain their power base. And you kind of just mentioned that I hear that people everywhere, walks of life now, are saying on the internet that, of course, JP Morgan got caught and got fined for silver manipulation. It's a known fact anymore. They can't hide that anymore. So the propaganda machine crumbling before us is a big point here moving forward in this storyboard. Okay, Andy, let me bring you up on the screen. You were taking some frantic notes there as our friend was talking. So please share with the audience also your thoughts of why this time is different. You started by saying that 2 weeks ago you sold 18 tons of silver in 1 week. You never saw that in your career. What else here do you see, and what are your contacts telling you as to why it's different right now?
All right, so I'm going to try to dovetail off a lot of the things BIX said. See, BIX and I, in many respects, look at a lot of things in this world the same. And I was supporting GATA when BIX was writing there, before I knew BIX personally. And my father and I, when we started the company, were immediately big supporters of Bill Murphy and Chris Pollan. And I would like to publicly say that we all owe Bill and Chris a debt of gratitude. Any of us who own gold and silver should just, tip our hat to two guys that have stood up to a lot of stuff, to the biggest money in the world, and have continued fighting for all of us for a very long time. So much love and respect to those guys. And that's how I originally met BIX. BIX was one of the original contributors to La Metropole and to GATA, two sites that really helped shape my thinking. Some of the things that BIX said, talking about JP Morgan being out of the market, it is different. But what accentuates the difference to me is that although they are now, as Ted Butler says, on the long side doing what he calls a double cross to the other commercial banks, they have amassed north of 1 billion ounces of physical silver and 35 million ounces of gold. This is the largest physical position of metal the world has ever seen, held by a bank that just paid a $920 million fine to the Justice Department, but somehow they were allowed to still be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust. I suppose the final chapters of this book haven't been written yet, but what I would say is what speaks volumes to me is now they somehow have found a way to be long in the market and have a massive position of physical metal on the sidelines. I think they wouldn't have accumulated all that metal if it not to be something very, very important to them in the long run. One of the things that BIX talked about is the banks wanting to get out of the market. I think they're trapped. There are several banks that are trapped on the short side, and they're losing money, as he said. And this is true. For the very first time, the banks are losing copious amounts of money. So one of the things that are different to me in that respect is, let's go back to August 9th and look at what they did in an effort to eradicate themselves from these positions. But not only that, what happened when there's another trader sitting on the sidelines, which really is a difference that I'm going to talk about. So on August 9th, some idiot dumped, I don't know how much silver they dumped, but I do know that they dumped somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 billion, 24,000 contracts of gold on August 9th. Now, it was done so in what's called the access market. We've talked about this before, JC, but for the title, what's different? The act of dumping 24,000 gold contracts, 2.4 million ounces of gold in the middle of the night at 4:30 in the morning, in and of itself is not different. This is what they do. They dump the metal in the middle of the night when London is closed and New York hasn't opened yet. Now, this is the height of stupidity, because what you are guaranteeing is the worst possible settlement. And that trader, as I've mentioned, would be fired and shot, and most likely not in that order, because you are guaranteeing the price to drop. So it did. And when it dropped, it fell by $100 in gold, because what they did, as we've talked about, they pushed the ball over the hill. And as it started rolling down the hill, it triggered all the stops on the way to New York. All of the hedge funds that were long, by the time they got into their office in New York, they would have been sold out of their positions. The algorithms that run their funds would have said, we are now over the 200-day. It's plummeting with momentum, time to get out, which begets more selling, begets more selling. So gold hits New York down $100. Silver's under 22. The minute it hit New York, the traders, these short positions on COMEX, the commercial banks, covered 66 million ounces of gold and covered over $2 billion worth of gold contracts at lower prices. So when we talk about what they are trying to do, they are trying to get out of these positions. And to me, that's different. And they're using the same tactics to get out of their short positions and get long. But what is really different is, I've talked about for the last year and a half, this group called the others. These are managed money traders who are thought to be sovereign wealth funds largely. Last year, they bought over 300 million ounces of silver off the COMEX. That's 10 years worth of deliveries. But when the price fell on August 9th, I want people to think about the sheer size of this. One trader stood for or purchased at $100 difference in price from the night before, as they drove the price down, 40,000 December gold contracts. Now, that's 4 million ounces of gold. That's $7.5 billion worth of gold with an initial margin requirement of $330 million. Who the hell's got that kind of money, right? And what they have been doing, like in the silver market, is standing for delivery. Now, that tells me that December 1st, this entity is going to say, give me my gold. That's very different. You have people standing up to the commercial banks. Never seen that before. So when you talk about this time being different, you got JP on the long side, you got their cohorts who are stuck on the short side, trying as hard as hell to get out and making it much more difficult. You're using a poker parlance or a poker term. The commercial banks say, I'm all in, and they bluff. And there's never been anyone to say, okay, I call. Now there is. And the people that are calling are standing for delivery. And it's one thing to push the price around with paper. It's another thing to have to come up with the real thing. That's different. In terms of retail buying, when we look at what's happened with silver, it's experienced a renaissance. You know, BIX talked about it's easier to buy silver now than ever before. It's truly experienced a renaissance globally. And, you know, in large part to guys like BIX and you, JC, and the Wall Street Reddit group and Chris Marcus and all of the people that are working tirelessly to tell the story about what's happening with silver. It's different. And, you know, the demand is truly off the charts. And what's different about that is that we are seeing people who will come in and spend $5 million on a first-time transaction and buy 200,000 ounces of silver like that. Never talked to the guy before. I mean, and the wire shows up. He's like, I already wired you the money. I called your office this morning. It should be in your account. What? So this is different. This stuff has never, ever, ever, ever happened. And to me, what I'd like to talk about, what I think the very biggest thing that's different, and I've talked about this too on your show, so I'm sorry that I'm repeating myself, but when you talk about what's different, maybe the biggest difference, is what happened in Saudi Arabia 3 weeks ago. You have Saudi Arabia, the day that we have the debacle in Afghanistan, signing a joint military agreement with Russia. This is what gives us our petrodollar world reserve status, the protection of the Saudi kingdom, which was now just signed an agreement, same agreement signed with Russia, who then the next day does it with Nigeria, the two biggest oil producing countries in the world. And, you know, when you look at China doing the Belt Road Initiative, are we going to go mess with Nigeria? Are we then, in essence, messing with China? Are we going to mess with Saudi Arabia the way that we did with Saddam Hussein and with Gaddafi, because they threatened to sell their oil in euros, and mess with the Russians, who the next day on Zero Hedge told the world how they've outfitted their nuclear submarines and their battleships with hypersonic ICBMs. That's their way of saying, don't fuck with us. So that's different. Everything is different this time. And in all my life, in all the years I've done this, over half my adult life, since I was 19 years old, I've never, ever, ever experienced anything like it. And it started in February of 2020 with my first real interview with you, BIX. Ever since that day, honest to God, I swear, since that day, February 2020, right when the cough started, we're working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's different. I used to be able to, you know, go meet my buddies for happy hour at 5 and play golf 2 days a week. Now it's like I can't even say goodbye to my kids when they go to school, or hello when they come home, or good night when they go to bed. And it's a blessing. I'm not complaining, Bixie, but it's different. I mean, it truly, truly, honest to God, it's different. And I don't see it letting up. In fact, if anything, the people who I'm doing business with, who have never done business with us before, never owned an ounce of gold before, the day after that guy spent $6 million with me, he calls me from his church with the deacon of his church to spend $1 million. These are things that have never happened. So I can tell you, just from what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing, this is as different gets.
You're muted.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Biggs. My dog was making noise again here. All right. So we have Cliff here saying, yes, I called Andy at Miles Franklin here to get some silver. And I wanted to give you guys an update. Of course, here, there's still people looking for the Silver Woo special. That is long gone, folks. It took 2 days for Andy to sell out this special here for the David Morgan and Cliff High episode. But we do have our main special on this week, which is beyondmystic.net/silver. This is the main contact form to obtain these discounted price here for the Beyond Mystic audience. And this goes directly to Andy and his crew. Andy, do you want to talk about this new coin here very quickly, the platypus, before we move on to my next questions?
Yeah, it's just, you know, look, I try to find things that are unique, that are good value. It's a 2-ounce coin. Haven't seen many of them before. Every week I bring a special to you and trying to find something new that you don't see very often. But I can promise you this: if anyone goes and looks at any of the stuff that I'm offering as a special, for example, especially the Silver Eagle, the 2021, you're going to find that's by far the very best price in the United States. Most companies are $2 or higher, including the online discount brokers. They're all way higher. Anything that you can buy from the 5 major mints of the world, 6 major mints: United States, Canada, Austria, Australia, South Africa, United Kingdom. That's synonymous with liquidity. So nothing truly extraordinary. It's a limited edition. It's just I'm trying to bring things to the public that are good value and that we haven't seen already 10 times before.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. Okay, let me bring Bix back on here. Bix, did you want to make a few comments on the reasons why this time is different from Andy before I ask you more questions? You want to comment on the? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just one thing that Andy's been saying for at least a year about the others that he deals with, and I just want to tell people that is absolutely true. And as a matter of fact, I found one of those others from the what was it called? The Silver Squeeze of January, February this year. And that other company is called Private Advisor Group, LLC. This one entity bought 30% of SLV's inventory in the first quarter of this year. 30%, meaning 190 million ounces of silver SLV shares in the first quarter of this year. And then I believe they took delivery of probably about 100 million of those shares. With SLV, the brokers are required, if you have 50,000 shares of SLV, you can take delivery. Yes, you'll have to pay a little fee to the broker for them to figure out what to do, but this is one of the others. It is an entity that is not really regulated as much as normal stock entities. It's called it's private advisors are treated differently than like the big mutual funds and things like that. But this is the entity. They do have to report their holdings every quarter. And this quarter, the first quarter of this year, it was a gigantic 30% of all SLV was held by one entity. That's what, when Andy talks about others, there's a great example of these others are not little guys. It's not the Reddit people. It's not the Wall Street Silver Bets guy. It's monsters. You need a hell of a lot of money and a hell of a lot of balls to take delivery of 100 million ounces of silver when JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and Jeffrey Christian and Jeff Curry are crying that there's a rush on silver. He had to get Rustam Benham, the head of the CFTC, to help stop it. So these are real entities when Andy starts talking about the others, and these others are the ones that are really going to help us in this battle. Okay,
very good.
Yeah, I agree. And the reason I call them the others is that, as BIX will know, because he's an expert at reading the Commitment of Traders report, it's usually just the commercial banks and the specs, which are the hedge funds. Then they title this third group of reportables as the others. Sovereign wealth funds and family offices there are supposed to be. And BIX, if I remember right, you reported back then when that happened that someone withdrew 90 million ounces out of SLV right after the price was smashed down. I think your 90 and 100 million, probably the same group, where they were able to pull that silver out without anyone knowing about it, because it doesn't have the same type of reporting requirements that it would be if they were to take delivery of COMEX contracts. So anyways, it's real. And these are the most wealthy, well-informed, influential private traders in the world. So thanks for that, Bix.
Okay, very good. Quick note here also, I spoke with Bill Holter the other day. Whoops, I lost you guys. Where'd you go? There you go. And he's coming back on the show here on October 26th, 4 p.m. Hi-Ho Silver, that's Bill and his horse, Principe. I can't wait to have Bill back on to talk about silver and gold. So mark your calendars for that one. That's going to be absolutely amazing. Let's get into fundamentals here while you're on the screen. Andy, in one of our last shows, maybe a month ago, you were describing for the audience how this great flippening happened last year. Of course, we're talking about the difference between the investment demand and the industrial demand. So can you share with the audience here the highlights of that and why that also ties into why this time it's absolutely different? The pressure is through the roof here, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I mean, most commodities have demand for one thing. Copper is demanded almost entirely for industrial applications, and gold mostly for monetary. But with silver, you have such a unique, and it is really different. And I'm glad you brought that up, because, you know, a lot of people will say, well, if things really slow down, silver will go down because it's an industrial metal. Well, first of all, I don't believe that. Number one, because we have massive expansion in industrial uses from green and digital and solar and all of these new applications. There's 500 ounces of silver in the tip of every Tomahawk cruise missile that we seem to fire off like eating gumballs. So the need for silver in everything from military to green to digital, the drive to all new battery-powered vehicles is extraordinary. And then you have a renaissance. What is different? A renaissance in demand for silver. We used to mostly sell gold, and now, over the last 2 years, silver represents over 90, almost 95% of everything that we sell. The demand for silver is extraordinary on a monetary level. And, you know, when you look at an asset that is coming out of the ground, according to Keith Neumeier, at a 7-to-1 ratio, this is different, and yet priced at 77-to-1. Look, I mean this when I say I think it's the opportunity of a generation. You could have said the same thing about Bitcoin, I suppose, and Theta and other cryptocurrencies, things I don't know as much about. But I will tell you, in my universe, and I do own Theta and Theta Fuel because of my buddy Bix, and And I'm sure it's an amazing opportunity. But for 31 years, I have been all about gold and silver. And I looked at silver as the opportunity of a generation. When you look at something from an economic perspective, you focus on the demand and the supply. The supply of silver is depleted in nature. That's obvious. It's found in nature in a form called epithermal, very close to the surface. The big deposits have been gone a long time ago. Of all the silver that's coming to the market right now, 30%, only 30% of the silver comes from primary silver mining companies like Keith Neumeyer's First Majestic. 70% of it comes from other companies digging holes in the ground for other things and say, oh, look, we found some silver. The big deposits have been gone forever. So you have a depleted asset that has massive increase in industrial applications, but is exploding in its monetary applications, in its monetary demand. It's different. You have an asset that if you just didn't know what it was and someone said it's depleted, its use cases in industry are extraordinary and expanding, its demand from a monetary aspect are extraordinary and massively expanding, wouldn't you think that's a good investment? To me, it is probably the most undervalued asset on the planet and the opportunity of a generation. And with as much integrity, honesty, and objectivity that I can offer, I believe that in my soul.
Okay. Let me bring you in, Bix, on that question also. And I want to share with the audience, this is the link to the Beyond Alta Cliff High with David Morgan Silver Woo report on BitChute. And the Silver Guru here, David Morgan, did go quite a bit into details as to the fundamentals of silver. So if you're looking for more of that information, this is the blockbuster episode for you. Bix, so going back to this flippening here between industrial demand and retail demand, what have you seen and why do you think that's also important here moving forward? You mentioned Bitcoin earlier, or cryptos earlier. There's a new outlet. We'll get to that segment in a second here, but let's talk about the fundamentals here between investment and industrial demand also from your standpoint.
One of the problems all along is with price rigging in silver, everybody's understanding of where silver should be priced is askew. And we saw that in the pricing of oil. They stuck oil at minus $40. Everybody's like, wait a minute, how can oil be minus $40? It's a click of a mouse to put oil at minus $40. It's a click of a mouse to put silver at minus $40. The problem isn't the silver. The problem isn't the industrial application or the monetary application. The problem is the only exchange on the planet that prices silver is something called the COMEX, futures and options contracts pricing a real hard asset. That's a problem. It's a huge problem. There is no other exchange. The LBMA is not an exchange. LBMA is an association because they lie. Everything they say is a lie. They claim to physically transfer over 100 billion ounces of silver every year on the LBMA. Anybody who knows anything about silver can tell you that's ridiculous. So we don't even look at that market. It has nothing to do with price. So it all comes down to futures and options on the COMEX. The average daily volume, the ADV, is around 400 million ounces per day on the COMEX trading hands. It's all orchestrated out of this company called Virtu Financial. Virtu Financial is a high frequency trading company started by Vincent Viola. He was the counterpart to Bernie Madoff back in the day. Virtu Financial is the only non-bank entity that is an authorized participant in SLV. SLV, the largest ETF, also facilitated the leasing of silver into that, which Goldman Sachs just admitted to, by the way. So SLV, I think SLV does own the physical silver, but it's also owned by other people. For example, JP Morgan leases physical silver to Goldman Sachs, who sells it theoretically into SLV, but at the same time has some kind of withdrawal right because they claim that they can hedge that position on the COMEX. So basically you got 3 or 4 different shorts for every ounce of silver out there. And leasing silver is a silver short because they're going to have to pay back that silver unless it is a fixed purchase price at the end. They got to give the silver back in a lease. So there's all kinds of problems on this, and it all gets down to the same thing. And I've been screaming about it since the days of the Silver Summit up in Spokane, and nobody wanted me to talk about it. It's all computers and derivatives that have screwed up these prices in these markets. That's all these things are. Computers and derivatives. The Exchange Stabilization Fund they don't have to declare anything. They have unlimited computer derivatives that they can trade at any moment in time. Everybody basically colludes, as we saw in the JP Morgan case. They call them Bank A, Bank B, Bank C, and then they named the traders, so everybody knew it was JP Morgan, it was Bank of America, it was UBS, and it was Citibank. Mm-hmm. And there were like 5 others. They were all colluding to set this price to keep the system going. But that's the key. It is so important for them to keep the unbacked fiat monetary system going that for the past over 100 years, they've had to rig the price of gold and silver. With cryptos, you can make the argument they don't have to rig the prices of gold and silver because there's another alternative to fiat money. Before there wasn't, but now there is. So what gives? What allows the CFTC, the regulator, who's down to 3 people, and next week will be down to 2 people, which is completely ridiculous. But what gives them the moral authority to allow this criminality to go on? Because clearly Rustin Benham, when he came on and said, "Oh, we stopped that silver squeeze," clearly he had no idea. Well, he did. He had every idea what would happen if silver is freely traded. That's all we want. We don't want rig jobs up or down or sideways. We want freely traded assets, because if you don't have free markets, you don't have freedom. And that's where we are right now.
Okay. Awesome. Oh, there's a bit of an echo here. I think bring your speaker volume down on your side, BIX.
I'm screaming again.
Okay, there you go. Okay, I'm going to bring up we're going to get into crypto next year in a moment, but first I want to bring up a point of contention, maybe a difference of opinion between both of you guys, and I respect the hell out of both of you, and so too the audience. So having this conversation, this adult conversation about gold here today, I think is also important for the audience. Now, we've seen extreme variations now in the gold to silver ratio. We're pretty high right now. BIX is of the opinion that, of course, you should be into silver. And Andy is of the opinion that you should also not forget gold. So you guys have a little bit of a different opinion there. So I'm going to start with you, BIX. Okay, you're on the screen. Tell me your position here on why silver rather than gold. We can get into these caches of gold everywhere around the world that we haven't been told of yet, and some of your research on that's been very fascinating, to say the least. And folks, if you want to get into that, that's at roadtoruda.com. So let's expound a little bit here on your position with respect to gold and silver, BIX.
Well, I used to love gold. I got into silver because of gold. I abandoned gold for silver for a good reason. And that reason was every single metric except one in silver, in the silver gold ratio, points to silver being massively undervalued. And that one metric is the price set on the COMEX. Every other metric, the amount coming out of the ground at 8-1, the amount traded on the COMEX is 20-1. I mean, it's like every single thing you can think of when you're talking about a ratio between 2 different things. The organic ratio, how much silver is above ground, it's 1-1. There's 6 billion ounces of gold and 6 billion ounces of silver right around there above ground. That's 1-1. Below ground, we only have, what they say, 17 years left of silver, as you know, if we keep consuming at this rate. There's so many metrics, but the only one that says the price ratio should be 75 or 80-1 is the COMEX price that is set every day by futures and options. That's the only thing. There is no other reason to own gold. And I get that it's historically the king of metals. That's because the bankers wanted it to be the king of metals. That's because they had all the metal. And then we get to, I mean, for me, the biggest thing is, you know, Jeffrey Christian will tell you there's 200,000 to 250,000 tons of gold that's ever been mined. there are so much evidence, hard evidence. You read Gold Warriors by Sterling and Peggy Seagrave about Yamashita's gold. You read all my work on the Grand Canyon gold. You read the front page of the New York Times in 1912. You just go down the list of Chocolate Mountain in California. I believe there's over 2 million tons of gold, double or 10 times what is out there. And silver, who knows? I have yet to come across, I came across one secret silver stash, and that was the Y12 facility for the Manhattan Project, where the U.S. government borrowed 3 billion ounces of silver to make these calutrons. That has been torn down and put back into the market in the mid-1990s. There is no other silver conspiracy that I have found, and I've searched hard and wide for silver, secret hidden stashes of silver. There's none. I don't believe there's any, and that's the reason they had to tear down the most important military facility that mankind has ever made, the Y-12 facility in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. They had to get the silver in the 90s when Buffett was buying all that silver. That's my take, and I know, Andy, there's no way to counter this argument that you should, other than it's nice to have both, but let's hear it. I would love to hear why.
Let him speak. Hold on. Okay.
All right, well, sorry.
Okay.
And folks, go check out the Shock and Awe from the Grand Canyon here. That was a great episode with Jenny Moonstone and BIX. You can find that again on roadtoruta.com. Okay, Andy, back to you here.
I agree with everything he says. I do. However, the only place we differ, and I agree. I mean, that's why I said it's the buying opportunity of a generation. But look, something has to be explained to me why the Bank of International Settlements would reclassify gold as a tier 1 reserve asset, the only other one in the world next to US dollars. And if you stop right there, but go back 2 years when all the central banks were selling gold, the German Bundesbank said, send me back all my gold. The Bank of Austria, the Dutch National Bank, Bank of Poland, Bank of Turkey, Bank of Hungary, they all said, send us back our gold. That was 2017. 2018, that same group buys more gold as a group than they did in the 60 years previously combined. That number is up 100% in 2019. Then they reclassify it as a tier 1 reserve, the only other one in the world next to US dollars. 2020, those numbers are continuing to go up. You're seeing massive acquisition like this one managed money trader who is long what is pretty close to the largest concentrated long position the COMEX has ever seen at 40,000 contracts for one trader. That's 4 million ounces of gold. So I guess I would just simply say this. From a standpoint of profit, from a standpoint of value, from a standpoint of once in a generation opportunity, everything Vic says is right. Completely agree with it. But when you see the most well-funded, well-informed, influential traders on the planet massively front-run a decision by the Bank of International Settlements, which is the central bank, and that is wickedly accumulate it and remove it as something Bix always says, if you don't have it, you don't own it. So they said, give us back our gold from the Fed and from the Bank of England. So they removed the counterparty risk. They copiously bought it. And then their cohorts at the BIS said, well, it's tier 1 now. So that's a riskless asset. So I guess the only difference of opinion, it's not in anything that he says. I don't doubt the fact that there's more gold out there than is reported. I don't doubt the fact that silver is a hell of a better investment. But the only exception that I take is that the most influential money in the world looks at gold as money, looks at gold as wealth, looks at gold as riskless, and they are accumulating the crap out of it. So for me, I wouldn't count out gold. And because the biggest, most influential money in the world certainly isn't. So Vix, on many respects, I completely echo what you say. And I'm a silver bug, but I think it's dangerous, shall we say. In the back of my mind, I think it's dangerous to ignore completely gold. And maybe you get a ratio of, when you buy, you do 70 or 80% silver and 20 or 30% gold. I know you don't agree with that. And every time I do these shows where I mention gold, I'd say, well, Bix and Chris and the silver rhetoric, they're not going to agree with me. But when you see the most influential, well-informed, and wealthy traders on the planet make such an effort to accumulate gold, remove counterparty risk, and reclassify a tier 1, something tells me that something is in store for gold as well.
Okay, all great points. And maybe to break the tie here, we have Cliff High in the chat, and he says, okay, all of what Bix is saying, plus the fact that Bix, of course, has a silver dagger, that should settle the whole debate. So I love Cliff, that's funny. But he says, hey, wait a second, does Andy have a gold dagger, Andy?
No, but I got this.
Oh, that's nice. The silver
Right to
bullet.
silver.
Yeah.
I love it.
Bix,
do you have your dagger to show the audience?
I do. Let me go get it.
Okay.
Of course he does. I don't have a gold dagger, but I got some silver bullets that'll work. You know, they say you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. So
Right. That's hilarious. All right, there's Bix. He's back. There you go, guys. Get ready to be shocked and awed. Oh, I love it.
I submit. You win, Bixie.
And there's the coin.
Oh, sweet.
That's
So yeah, no, I don't win. I get what you're saying, and it's true, and you're absolutely correct. I would say the only rebuttal I would have to that would be they can't do the same thing with silver. Silver's way too valuable to be put in the same category as gold with the central banks, because just a tiny participant in that central bank game with gold can buy up every single ounce on the planet and have no silver and watch the silver ratio flip to 1 ounce of gold for every, or 1 ounce of silver for every 75 ounces of gold. So that, I mean, they can't. There's nothing that
I agree with you. That's why it's a better investment. It is. Silver is a better investment, but nonetheless, I'm just one of these guys that hedges my bet just a little bit.
Well, let me ask you, and Cliff, Bix, you can decide not to answer. It's a personal question. Are you now completely divested of gold? Because I know you were making videos a while back saying people hate trading your gold to get more silver and all of that. Do you have any left?
I have a gold filling left. I actually made a video the day I traded in my last gold eagle for, at the time, it was 85 silver eagles. I think the ratio's up at like 100 and something. They gave me 85. But at the same time, I mean, that gold eagle was so beautiful. That's the most beautiful coin in the world. But, I look at it, I'm like, why? And because I love gold so much, I want to invest everything I can at silver at 75 or 80 to 1. And then when the ratio flips back to 1 to 1 or 2 to 1, I'm going to be sitting there with like mountains of gold.
That's a good point.
Switch back. If you love gold, switch back when the reality sets in that the game has been rigged. The price of silver has been suppressed for 150 years.
And that's what I say to people. I say that to people, that the time to do it, if it's 11 times undervalued right now, basis what's coming out of the ground, 77 to 7. Yeah, you're right. You put $100,000 into silver, it could be worth 1.1 million in gold when that happens. All it does is, just on today's numbers, when the ratio meets its natural mean, it's God's ratio. I completely agree with that. I don't disagree with Bix at all. In fact, I tell people that everyone I talk to on the phone, I tell them that gold or silver is the buying opportunity of a generation. And when people say, what should I do? The only difference between what he would say and what I would say on a initial basis is, I say silver is too good of an opportunity to pass up, but I wouldn't count out gold. And if you do buy a whole bunch of silver right now and don't get any gold, keep in mind that when that ratio flips, it might be a good idea to trade some of that silver for gold. Again, I don't know what the future brings. Everything Bix says is completely logical. That's why I love listening to Bix, because he has a take on so many things that you don't hear. Even going way back to the $100 bill and the story on the 100. I mean, everything that he talks about, you don't hear it anywhere else. He has a fresh take, and I believe in it. And I believe in you, Bix. And I don't discount anything you're saying, but still, I think it would, in my mind, it would be good to have a little exposure to gold. And if it happens when it goes 1 to 1 and you're sitting on a mountain of gold, great. I'll be the first one there to make that swap for you and make it work well. So for what it's worth, I don't disagree at all.
Okay. And one last question here on this segment before we get into crypto. In our interview with Cliff High, of course, before the interview, I had to ask my audience, what questions did you have for Cliff? And the number one question was, when is the $600 silver, JC? Don't forget to ask Cliff. And it was funny. I did ask Cliff in this episode, and I referred to the Webbot data reports where he had predicted that in the same year where Bitcoin would hit $64,000 and retrench by about half, in that same year, we would see $600 silver. And now we are here in 2021, and we've seen the $64,000 Bitcoin retrench by half. I also asked David Morgan the same question. He said, well, JC, without the woo here, if you just look at John Williams' shadow stats information on where silver should be today, if we accounted for inflation, we would be at $600 silver. So let me bring you, Bix, on this here. What's your take on the likelihood or possibility of that $600 silver here anytime soon?
Zero chance on the comics. Now, I think silver is worth a lot more than $600. I think it will, physical silver will trade for $600, but it can never trade for $600 on the futures and options contract exchange called the COMEX. The basic reason is the 8 shorts are what, 250 million ounces short. And that would be take 250 million times 600, and you'll see how much these too big to fail banks would lose. So I do see $600 silver coming. You just won't know that it's worth $600. You'll be begging for a real physical silver exchange. I mean, the best place to buy silver at that point, when the COMEX would shut down, it would be shown for what a fraud it is to call up your broker. Call up Andy and say, hey, you know, how much? And he'll, at that time, he probably won't even have any silver, but he'll know people with silver. He'll be calling up you and me and say, hey, got a guy who will buy 20 ounces of silver for $600 an ounce. You want to do that deal? He'll be a broker jumping around trying to find silver, matching them up with people with all this cash, saying, oh my God, the COMEX is closed. How do I get my silver?
Right. Well, it would be a real, what Bix is saying, I think what he's saying is true. I think the COMEX will be replaced, whether it's a Shanghai Gold Exchange or something in the Middle East, wherever it is. The COMEX is being, so much of the information that comes out of this country is crap, whether it's out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics on unemployment or inflation, or the information that we get coming out of the COMEX. We all know that it's not real. And, if that were to happen, if the COMEX were to blow up, the first thing that would happen is that, getting product from anyone like me would be really hard, because we use the COMEX for the reason that it was designed for, and that is to offset risk. And as I've said before, a farmer plants a field in April, a field of wheat, doesn't want to wait until September to see how the growing season is. He sells his production in the end of the year to a baker who needs it for his bread. The baker's happy paying the price months in advance, locking that in so he knows he'll have wheat for his bread. And the farmer's happy that he's offset the risk of the unexpected weather and what happens in the growing season. For us, if I have 200,000 ounces of silver in my warehouse, I have to sell 200,000 ounces on COMEX. I don't do it to gamble. I do it because if the price of what is in my warehouse goes down, it goes up commensurate on what I sold short on COMEX and vice versa. It allows me to be market neutral. This is what COMEX was designed for. It's turned into a speculative casino controlled by 4 banks. Not cool. And at some point when it blows up, as it most certainly will, and price discovery becomes real, it will be real somewhere else. Probably not in the United States, probably not in London, maybe Asia, maybe the Middle East. Don't know where that number will be derived, but be careful what you wish for. A situation like that would make getting product in this country next to impossible, because the dealers would not be able to hold any inventory. If you hold inventory, you're speculating with your life. So instead, it would have to be cash meets silver like that. And but look, we're not too far from that number already. If you were to take the real, what's coming out of the ground, Bank of America says gold should be at 3,000 by 2022. Divide that number by 7, you're at like $450. Are we really that far away? If if the COMEX, if those trades stop doing what they're doing. That's a big if. I don't know what it will take for it to happen, but you know, I've learned in 31 years the markets go higher than anyone ever thinks possible and falls further than anyone ever thinks possible. When I started in this industry, the Dow Jones was 2,100. It's gone up 17-fold, 18-fold, right? No one would have thought that was possible in 1990. And at the same time, the Japanese Nikkei was 40,000, and it's 2/3 of that right now. It's never gotten back even close to it over 30 years with interest rates at or near zero. Markets fall further than anyone thinks possible and go higher than anyone thinks possible. When you say $600, it's no more pie in the sky, no more than telling me when gold was $252 that it would get to 2,000. It's no more pie in the sky that when the Dow Jones was 2,100, it would get to 36,000. So, you know, I don't think these are crazy statements, but what I do think is real is that at some point the world's going to say, F off COMEX, we've had it, and we want some real price discovery. And that's going to happen. How it happens, how it blows up, who takes the reign, that's another question altogether. But I do think all of these things that you guys are talking about, as far-fetched as they sound, they're not so far-fetched, really, in the environment that we have right now. The question always is, and everything I've ever seen in 31 years, you know, when you base your decisions upon mathematics and economics with sprinkling of logic, it happens. But what triggers it? Nothing in my mind would have ever told me that the craziness that we've seen in the last 18 months would have been triggered by a worldwide pandemic, et cetera, and all of the things around it. You just never know what the trigger is. But the reality of it, the logic, the math, the economics, the logic, it's real. And so these things will happen. And that's why I support your argument more than you think, Bix. I really do. But I guess there's, in my mind, sometimes something a little bit more than profit that motivates me, and hedging my bet a little bit is all. But deep down, I've been all in on silver for the last 3 years, and but I'll always be a gold at heart. I can't lie.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Andy. The one thing you guys can, of course, agree on, I think, is a comment that Cliff High is famous for saying, that all of this criminality from the COMEX and the central bankers is subsidizing you to buy silver at a very, very low price. So at least for that, we can thank them. And of course, we can thank Andy SCHECTMAN here from Miles Franklin with this affiliate discount here for the Beyond Mystic audience. You can find that at beyondmystic.net/silver for this exclusive special here for the Beyond Mystic fans. Bix, let me bring you up on the screen. In your introduction statement, one of the reasons why you said this time was different, you talked about crypto. Now, I've interviewed the disruptor in chief here, Reggie Milton, a few times already on my show. Why don't you start, Bix, by talking about the concept of decentralized finance, DeFi, and how right now this time is different because we're seeing these central banks hurrying up to introduce their own CBDCs, central bank issued digital currency, to compete with some other cryptos out there so that they can stay in the game. Let's talk about this fight here, or this upcoming fight that humanity is going to face, and how, again, why this time it's different.
Well, I wouldn't lump in Veritasium with the central bank's digital currencies. Two different things, completely different.
Oh, no, what I'm saying is they've quashed him because they're also trying to introduce their own, and they don't want the competition. So that's one example of things where we're going to be seeing this fight. That's what I meant by that.
Right. Yeah. Well, what Reggie invented was more. It's not it's not going up against the central banks. It's going up against the Goldman Sachs, is the intermediaries in exchanges. Reggie invented a peer-to-peer asset exchangeable.
Disintermediation is his term.
Disintermediation. Yeah. Take out the middleman, and it's beautiful, and it's a beautiful thing. So I do think they're going to implement Veritasium. He was the first to come up with it. He does have at least submitted the patent in the U.S. His patents were approved in Japan. For DeFi, you can call it what you want. It is DeFi, peer-to-peer transactions. I think ultimately, you know, the central bank digital currencies, to me, unless they are structured the same as Bitcoin, where you can't raise the amount that you have to print only 21 million. It has to be an open source blockchain, immutable, meaning you can't change it. Unless it is identical to that type of structure, all it is another form of currency, another form of inflation on the system. It doesn't do anything. The whole reason that cryptos were invented was because of the abuse of the current system. And these people who invented, or they didn't invent the system, but they ran with it. They invented a lot of the derivatives of money that they play with now. All of this counts as the money supply in my mind. You get derivatives count as money supply too. People use them as fungible ways to pass goods and services back and forth. And there's quadrillions of those. So throwing in another few trillion in central bank digital currencies, all it does is continue to liquefy the market. Obviously, inflation is raging everywhere that they can't control it. Now they can control the numbers that they tell you that inflation is, but they can't control, you have scarcity now. Of course, there's going to be scarcity when everything's rigged. Who wants to get rid of the real thing? China didn't shut its borders for all our electronics just to be nice. They're not saying that. They say, oh, it's a shipping problem. It's a COVID problem. It's all these other problems besides what it probably really is they're strangleholding the goods and services that are made in the United States. I think it was a horrible idea to outsource production to China, even, on every single level. And now we're gonna face the ramifications of having to work on our own land and produce our own goods. And it's not a bad thing. We can shut our borders and just stop trading. And globalization is over. The fork has been stuck in globalization. It is done. It is finished. And the reversal of that is what is going to be crippling. So, going back to the digital central bank digital currencies doesn't solve a damn thing, but decentralized digital currencies solve the problem that those central banks caused. The global printing of money beyond anybody's recognition is what's going on right now. And, when you throw in Catherine Austin Fitz's discoveries, 29 trillion, I think they're up to 100 trillion if you count the bonds. And that's just what they discovered. How hard is it for the Fed to click a mouse, create $1 quadrillion and not tell a soul on the planet about it and go about their programs of bailing out banks behind the scenes? That's exactly what's going on today. So, central bank digital currencies, I think, will be a failure. They might try to clamp down with regulators on cryptocurrencies, but they know, at least in the US, they know if they do that, they will fall behind every other country in the world because the future is decentralized everything. And why? Because the people who have been running our country and running our monetary system are complete idiots and have destroyed it, including and mainly our politicians that are bought and paid for. So we can't trust anybody in the future. Trust is gone. The good cryptocurrencies are little trust machines, and that's what we need.
Well, that's a good point. The trustless system, no required to trust a counterparty writs. That's what the blockchain open ledger technology brings to us. And of course, this is why our governments around the world are trying to legislate. And Christine Lagarde's been, on the path here, saying that Bitcoin has to be regulated because it's up to its funny business. Of course, that's interesting. So let me bring Andy on the screen here too, because. Andy, of course, you love Theta. You're a big fan of Theta because of the work also that BIX is doing. But what's your understanding here of where perhaps this economy is going? And as Cliff High is saying, we don't want a new system. System implies that somebody has a top control, that there's going to be siphoning and a gaming of it. What we want is this organic human economy. How do you see cryptos, not the CBDCs, but the decentralized cryptos, perhaps be a central part in that, and tie in also the idea that perhaps a Veritasium or another cryptocurrency could also tie in gold and silver to the system? What are your thoughts, Andy?
I'm probably not the guy to ask this question. Let me phrase it a different way.
Okay.
This is where I think, and this is one of the reasons I think that gold was reclassified tier 1. You take a look at the new Chinese digital yuan that is going to be rolled out in the new Belt Road Initiative, which is 75% of human population. I have thought for a long time that they would try to peg it to gold and let gold go much, much higher and then peg it. And they wouldn't do a one-to-one. They wouldn't do a redeemable like they did in 1930, in the 30s, or prior to 33 rather, when you could bring a $20 gold piece into the bank and get a $20 bill and vice versa. But I think even if they pegged on a distributed ledger that was immutable, where the gold was audited by third parties in the Swiss vault or wherever it was, on a distributed ledger, so you could see unequivocally what was backing the currency. I have felt for a very long time that the Chinese will roll this out when the dollar starts to spiral down the inflationary drain. They will come out and they will say, as Alistair McLeod has said recently, he believes they have 38,000 tons of gold. And 20,000 by the state, 18,000 by the people, but that they will peg their new digital yuan to gold. And maybe this is part of the reason that they are coming out against things like Bitcoin, because they don't want competition in it. And I agree with BIX. The digital currency is just more fiat. You know, if you take a look at what's happening in the United States in a relation to that, you have right now the new tax bill. They want to anything that goes in or out of anything, from a bank account, a crypto account, Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, you name it. If it's over $600, they want to know about it. That's the precursor to a central bank digital currency. Well, they've been monitoring us everywhere, for a long time. Who cares that they're going to monitor us now with this digital currency? So, look, I'm not a crypto guy. I bought Theta because I trust BIX. And the reason I bought Theta is because it's a utility. To me, it's not a cryptocurrency, it's a utility. And I could logically connect the dots from A to B as to why you would want to own something that is maybe the future of the internet. To me, that is a utility. That's not a token like Dogecoin that was made as a joke and made people millionaires. So, look, I'm going to get a lot of heat for it, because one of the things that I am is I'm objective. And I don't dislike cryptocurrencies. They scare me because I've never taken the time to really understand how to safely use them, how to protect them. If I had to say what my one fear is for everyone who holds them, it's that the governments don't like decentralization. You are competing with the government for in the money space. They don't like that. And while everything that is being said makes tremendous sense, and they've done very, very well, you can see that the government is starting to put a lasso around the anonymity. So you can't get out any longer if this new tax bill passes without being flagged. And maybe you can. That just goes to show how little I know, and I don't need to get into an in-depth conversation about how you can get out of the system without being flagged. But they told us that if this tax bill passes, anything that comes out in Bitcoin gets a form 8900 or 8300, excuse me. 8300 is excess cash form. That goes to the IRS. And if they're going to require reporting on anything, inflows or outflows of $600, including crypto exchanges, my question is, you may have all the anonymity in the world, but what is your exit strategy? You may have decentralization that can go peer-to-peer, but what is the exit strategy? How do you pull that money out and buy things or convert it to cash? How do you get out? And maybe that's not even a big deal. All I can tell you is that I do believe, if I had to make a bet on what I think gold's role will be in all of this, it will be pegged to a new digital currency, whether it starts in China with the digital yuan, which is where I really believe it will, and the BRICS nations, or by hook and crook, the U.S. has no choice to do it and let gold go to the moon. And this is why you get people say gold will go to 10,000 and never come back down, because it will be pegged to a new world reserve currency or to a new standard. Because how else do you get people to drink the same bullshit Kool-Aid if you don't peg it to something? And so while I understand completely the decentralization, taking the money and the power into our own hands, I understand all of that. But the government's a big, scary thing, and they don't want to let that happen over time. In the recesses of my mind, Again, I don't disagree with anything in the crypto sphere. I don't. I just have a problem believing that the governments don't have a problem with it. So
okay.
That's my point.
Very good. And Bix, I see you're jumping at the edge of your seat here to talk about the exit strategy, but I'll get to that in a second. I just wanted to bring 2 points here that Andy made that are very important. One, when I talked to Reggie Middleton, and of course, Andy said, hey, I'm not the best guy to talk about this, but you made a very, very important point there, Andy. Reggie was also saying the same thing. You guys are chasing momentum. You should be chasing future utility. That's where the magic is in cryptocurrencies and these tokens and these utilities. So that's a very good point. And if you guys go watch this episode, I think it was the GameStop saga one in which he said that, it'll give you a little bit more details. Now, the other thing that Andy was mentioning here with China and the Belt and Road initiatives under digital yuan, Cliff High was also of the opinion maybe 2-3 weeks ago that perhaps this Evergrande situation could force China here to revalue gold. So that's interesting as well here too, because again, this time is different. That is the name or the title of this episode. There's a lot happening at the same time here. So Bix, let's go back here on the exit strategy that Andy was talking about here, and whether or not that's important at this game, or whether we are going to be there and not needing to exit anymore because that will be the new system. How do you want to address that, Bix?
You're talking about crypto?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my take has always been with crypto and gold that third party is the worst thing you can have attached to either one of those assets. And by definition, if you back crypto with gold, or if you back gold with a crypto, you're adding third party risk. So you're devaluing that asset. Now, having said that, there are functionality issues when it comes to currency, and we're going to have to use something. That's a given. How it's distributed is really important. I don't think it'll be what we have because of the mass misallocation. So many hidden, you look at these Pandora papers. I think they're nothing. I think they were a deep state move to, you notice there was no Americans on any of those papers, which is the most ridiculous thing ever, because it's the American politicians and the deep state that hide the most money. But all that money needs to go away for any kind of new system to start. Otherwise, we're just revaluing, keeping those hordes of money hidden and safe within the deep state, within the criminals that are hiding them. So I do think, I go back to the Road to Ruta and Greenspan's take that we need a creative destruction event, such as the crashing of the derivative market to level the playing field for everybody, and then move forward with something new. And I understand how disruptive that would be. But it is the natural and organic thing to happen in a system that is so corrupt, and so much corrupted, piled upon corruption in the unbacked fiat monetary system that, I mean, you look at like Tim Geithner, the old Treasury Secretary, was being, they're seeing if he's good enough to be Treasury Secretary. He's in Congress, and they find out he hadn't paid taxes in years. It's like, you want to put the guy in charge of taxes, a guy who never paid taxes. And why didn't he pay taxes? He didn't pay taxes because he knew it was all a joke behind the scenes. It was all a con. And the IRS has been militarized long ago to go after whoever they want for whatever reason they want. So yes, they will go after crypto people. As far as getting out of cryptos and monetizing your cryptos into fiat money, yes, you're going to need the banking system to stay intact to do that. As far as fighting the central banks of the world and the governments of the world with cryptocurrency, it is a lose-lose situation unless the government no longer has power, such as what Dick Allgaier was saying, that Congress is disbanded. Things like that. I mean, that's in the cards now. I would say it's been in the cards for a long time, but now it's definitely in the cards. We can see how Congress is dysfunctional and unfunctioning. And just imagine if all the truths come out about all the laws that they have been breaking. Look at all these Congress people who have hundreds of millions of dollars. It's like, how did you get hundreds of $1 million if you work at a job that pays you, $150,000 to $200,000 as a civil servant for the last 30 years? How did you end up with all this money? You know, they talk about the Fed front running, you know, Fed governors front run. That's all part of the same thing. You don't think all the Congress people front run, and that's been proven. So I think that the big thing we need to remember is when trust is gone, it's gone for good. Trust, faith, and confidence in the U.S. dollar has been so long in the making for a good crash that once it crashes, it won't come back. There's not going to be another country anywhere in the world that will have an unbacked fiat global world's reserve currency. That's what the United States dollar is now, or, you know, supposedly. There's never going to be another country and never going to be another currency that has that false sense of trust and faith. So, I mean, that's what we're getting into, and that's why cryptos are good. Yes, they will be fought. They will be fought by those people who want to control the system, but those are the people we're not going to trust. So, you know, what happens in the end, who the hell knows? Ultimately, on an individual level and on a country level, it will probably turn back to gold, silver, and cryptos and not be involved with the World Bank or the IMF, and we'll go back to a nationalistic type of monetary system. If you want to trade with another country, it will probably be done in physical gold or physical silver or oil. It won't be done in fiat money. That's my take, and mainly because of the abuse and the lack of trust that will follow. Because I mean, we're going to literally be on our knees in so much trouble if the monetary system fails. And yeah, you don't trust those people to restart things.
Right. And on that note, folks, please do go check out the Death of the Petrodollar series. There's about 10 hours worth of video here, all culminating with the end guest here, which was BIX WEIR to cap it all off. So that was an amazing last episode in this series. So guys, do go check that out. It'll give you the context.
One last thing on what BIX was saying too.
Go ahead.
You know, while we still can, we accept cryptocurrencies for precious metals because there are places like BitPay. Again, I don't know what the hell BitPay is all about. BIX might know, but all I do know is that when my operation sends someone a BitPay link, magically their cryptocurrency turns into cash, and we send them metal like that. So for those people who are sitting on a tremendous amount of profit, it's not a 4-letter word, it's a 6-letter word. Take some of that profit off the table, put it in silver, and take possession of it. So no matter what happens, you win. Because, you know, look, I've been wrong. I missed out on a lot of the crypto. I'm first one to admit it. I wish I would have bought Bitcoin when a gentleman who worked for me named Andy Hoffman mentioned it a long time ago. He was telling me to buy it, and VIX was telling me to buy it when it was under $300 a coin. I should have listened. I didn't. I was wrong. But what I do know is that when you make that kind of extraordinary profit, you know, put a little certainty into your portfolio and put it in silver and put it away while we're still able to do that.
Okay, very good. I guess we're going into our closing argument. So that was very good. And thank you, Andy, for that, because a lot of people were asking here too for an update as to when you can accept Canadian funds here. And you can already ship in Canada.
Really close. I mean, look, attorneys take forever, but our partner in Canada went to his attorney today. He's filing the papers. We are really close. I don't know when, but I guess, you know, I'd like to think by Thanksgiving we're taking orders in Canadian dollars. Anything that you're doing legally and setting up institutions or companies from country to country, we need to make sure we're doing it the right way. So the attorneys have already communicated, and our partner in Canada has taken the ball now to his attorney, and we're getting really close. But the website's done. We're going to do things online,
and for those Canadians also here who want to save maybe on exchange rate, in the meantime here, they can, of course, buy their silver or gold through crypto here using this form. So guys, maybe take a note of that. And as Andy was saying, take some profits. And I know perhaps there's other people in the room who have been doing that, taking profits in crypto. Do you want to share a little bit on that, Bix? I know it's personal. You want to share with your audience?
I have long said, you know, I look at cryptos, and I deal with it pretty much the same way I deal with gold and silver. I find my favorite and I study the hell out of it and then pick it, and then I throw almost everything into it. I did that with Theta and all the cryptos, and I'm like, well, this makes the most sense. It's, the governments are going to want to promote it, hence all the did we lose you, JC? Hence all the patents that they have. But yeah, you need to look at your portfolio, and a lot of my crypto loving people on the road to Ruta have been trying their hardest to balance out their portfolio between silver and cryptos. Mm-hmm. And I know it gets hard because cryptos run so fast. But I guarantee you, on the big 90% drops, you're going to be happy that you balance things out over time. You want to balance out your crypto portfolio with your precious metals portfolio. And it's difficult to do at times because cryptos run so fast. Mm-hmm. But on the crashes, you're really happy that you have your metal. And most people don't sell their metal to even out the ratio. I love the one-to-one ratio cryptos to silver.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And it's, at times it's very difficult.
yeah, I can imagine for sure, especially when Theta's on a tear.
When Theta drops 75%, which is part of cryptos, everybody.
Yeah.
I just, my take is balancing a portfolio to me is the difference between Theta and silver. That's balancing a portfolio. So yeah, definitely. If you have, if you're all in cryptos and you've done well, which, a lot of the road to root people have done extremely well, great time to balance with silver because, you're in cryptos for those big returns and we haven't seen those in silver. There's only one reason we haven't seen the same type of returns in silver and in gold. And that's the manipulation and the price suppression. When that ends, good night. You're going to see bigger returns than you ever saw in cryptos.
Right. Well, let me end on this. I have the same question for both of you gentlemen. I'll start with you, Bix, as you're on the screen. We'll end with Andy. In the Webbot data report, we had for years and years coming, and this was a data set that was accruing all of this time, and we're almost there now. And the concept was panic to own, whether that was in crypto or in physical precious metals. We're almost there now. What can you say, Bix, to the audience here who might not have taken their insurance positions yet and who are looking at all this, they're new here, and talk about this idea of panic to own and why they don't want to be buying when that panic starts and how perhaps they should educate themselves and take action now. What can you tell those people here watching the show?
Well, first of all, in silver, I'll talk about them separately. In silver, the panic to own would be the shutting down of the COMEX, which could happen literally at any moment. And I don't think it'll be shut down by the shorts covering their short positions. I think it'll be shut down a force majeure type of event that, I don't know, one of the too big to fail banks goes down and can't fulfill their promises. And they're just literally the markets would freeze and then nobody would ever short silver again on the scale that these banks do. And then you're looking at that would be a panic to own in silver. Would everybody be calling Andy? And Andy's like, I got nothing. There's nobody selling anything at any price right now that you can trust. So that would be the panic to own in silver. And it could happen literally overnight. Oh. On cryptos, to me, the panic to own will probably be the freezing of exchanges. A lot of these exchanges are pure fraud in the crypto world. And we've exposed that many times. Even the really good, like Coinbase, doesn't have the coins that they tell their customers they are holding for them. The best guess is 75%. They have 75% of the coin, but still, it's a fractional reserve system. Okay. And the reality of the regulator coming in the U.S. and saying, all right, we're going to stop until we get this problem under control. There won't be buys, there won't be sells. You won't know the price of cryptos. And you'd be panicking to get your hands on any because all of a sudden the world's changed. The world can change so drastically and so fast when all the fraud that's been built up. I mean, we're an inverted pyramid of fraud on the top. And it's not going to take much to knock this little apple cart over. And that's the time when it's all about what you have in your hands, in your hot little hands. Because everything else, no matter how much you love whoever's holding your asset, they're not going to have a choice, most likely, especially the concentrated, like SLV, where all that silver is concentrated. Who's going to get that? When the system breaks down, who's going to get that? Mining shares. I wouldn't want to own mining shares for the simple fact that every country will be thinking about, oh my God, what are we going to use as money? And so you think they're going to, let a foreigner come into their country when we've been stealing all of Mexico's silver for over 100 years? You really think when this breaks down that they're going to allow anybody to take another ounce of physical silver out of Mexico without paying, the ultimate price to the people of Mexico? I don't think the government, because the government's been in on it, but the people of Mexico have been really screwed in the last 100 years. And literally, that's the country that really got screwed. Mexico should be the richest country in the world because of the amount of silver that they have provided to the world at literally a fraction of its value.
Okay. And the soundbite from that is panic to own. It can happen any day now. All right. So Andy, how about you, man? What are your last words of wisdom here for the audience here in terms of this concept of panic to own? And you mentioned on the show here a couple of weeks ago that you had a fascinating conversation with your father with respect to these big orders and whether or not you had thought that through if you were going to feel those orders. Maybe explain that to the audience here too.
Yeah. I'll end with that conversation. Look, the three pillars of wealth in this country, when you have manipulation of interest rates, when you have nonstop pouring of money, stimulus as they call it, they find these words to make us feel better about it. But when you have copious amounts of money, 50% of every dollar ever created in the history of the United States done so in the last 18 months. When you have interest rates that have been held down to the point where we're running negative real rates across the board, what you have is an impossibility of price discovery. And they further this by pulling out of their measurements of inflation. Think about this: housing prices, food prices, and energy prices. What are the three things that are going through the roof? Natural gas and oil and all of the energy related commodities. With the housing market, housing prices have doubled. Go to the grocery store, buy a couple of steaks and a box of strawberries, you spend $100. I mean, food, energy, and housing has gone to the moon, yet they're stripped out of the CPI. The measurements of where we are much, much harder. But let's take a look at something. Stocks, bonds, and real estate, the three pillars of wealth in this country, are all inversely correlated to a rise in interest rates. This is why you have the Federal Reserve buying, at least what they claim to be buying, it's probably a lot more, $150 billion a month in U.S. Treasuries. This is why they can never stop doing that, because if they do, and interest rates are set by the market, not by the central planners, all three pillars of wealth disintegrate. The bond market is the mother of all bubbles. But look, for the first time in my career, stocks and bonds are no longer inversely correlated. They're positively correlated. They've lost their inverse relationship as they always were, meaning if interest rates rise, they both collapse, and you can throw on for your hot fudge sundae sauce, you can throw the real estate market on top of that. It's a shitstorm Sunday, and everything collapses all at once. So where is the panic buying? It's in Saudi Arabia, and it's in Nigeria. And if Russia really indeed is moving in, and China is moving in on our dominance in the world petrocurrency, and they issue a decree that they're going to accept oil in multiple currencies, the world will dump dollars so fast that $150 billion a month is going to amount to squat to hold the interest rates down and the crashing of the dollar. This is when they'll nationalize IRAs. This is when all stops come in. This is when they'll gate the money markets. This is when they will impose bail-ins. This is when the shit's really going to hit the fan. And so the panic buying comes when the realization that the only inversely correlated asset to the U.S. stock market right now are precious metals, and to the U.S. dollar, I might add. So where does the panic come in? The panic comes in when we wake up on a Monday morning, and it ain't going to happen with any warning. And it'll be Monday morning, and it'll be like, oh yeah, the Saudis just decided through OPEC to issue oil in yen, ruble, yuan, and other currencies. And like I said earlier, China and its Belt Road Initiative is connecting Asia and Africa? Are we going to go mess with Nigeria, in essence, mess with China? Are we going to go mess with Saudi Arabia and Russia, who is now protecting both of them in joint military cooperation agreements? Is this a bigger thing than we think? And I think it is. And that's when because everyone just seems to think that the Fed can keep things under control forever, perpetually keep interest rates down, perpetually keep asset prices high. And news for you, nothing good lasts forever. And if you view that as good, price discovery is impossible. Think of what it used to cost to buy a house. Think of what $100 used to buy you. Just think about where we are in the cycle. And if you see a system bust apart for whatever that catalyst is, and I seem to think in my heart, it is in Saudi Arabia. This is where it's going to break apart. They are going to issue, look, if you accept money for a good that you're trading someone, but yet that money is being devalued, issued by an insolvent government who is massively inflating away their currency, if you buy treasuries from this country where the real rates are negative, at what point do you say enough with this crap already? Time to move on. And I think those days are coming. That's when the panic happens, and people who have taken for granted the ability to buy whatever they want at a grocery store, to buy gold and silver for me, will realize that everything in this country is just in time. Everything is reliant upon a supply chain. Everything will turn upside down like that. And that's when panic comes in. And that's when you Katie bar the doors, because look, you know, I think there's a fine line between pessimism and realism. I'm not a doom and gloomer. I've never spoken this way ever in 30 years, but for the first time in my life, I'm scared. For the first time in my life, I'm frightened for the world my children are growing up in, because we have lived far beyond our standard of living, largely by the good graces of our foreign creditors. Those days are coming to an end. And that's when, in my world, you're going to see a whole crap load of panic. When people realize too late, you can't find it anymore. You should have bought it when nobody wanted it. And that's how the really, really wealthy people get wealthy. Look what they're doing on the COMEX right now. Some dude has 4 million ounces of gold that he's going to take delivery of on December 1st. He's not alone. The biggest money in the world is buying gold, buying silver, they're buying cryptos. They are de-dollarizing ahead of the stampede. And for all of you old enough to remember the Who concert way back when lots of people got stampeded trying to get out. I don't remember if it was in or out. I just remember there was a Who concert and everyone tried to make it through the doors at the same time, and a lot of them didn't make it out. That's what this market's going to look like. It'll be everyone trying to make it through the revolving door, and most people are going to get crushed. I hope I'm wrong. In my heart, honest to God, I believe I'm not.
And, well, Carly Simon here says, I hope Andy doesn't run because I'm coming for more silver. So thank you. Carly's a great customer. The BeyondMystic discounts here for silver. All right, folks, man, we're already a little bit long. Thank you so much to both of you guys. And folks, if you're looking for a little heads up on the crypto for this month, please check out Beyond Crypto Woo. This is the Hitchhiker's Guide that Janine and I put together every month to forecast where cryptos are going, as well as gold and silver. We have a current promotion going on right now. You can save 20% off of this report, and the code is SAVE20 for all of you guys here. And of course, if you're looking like Carly here for more silver, you can do so at beyondmystic.net/silver. This is where you can reach Andy for these Beyond Mystic discounts. And of course, BIX, you can find him and his amazing research at roadtoruta.com. And there also, you're looking for the private road subscription. Quickly, BIX, let's talk about that. What's going on there, and what do you have next for the audience?
This is the last week of giving away the Silver Ruta coins.
Oh, let me bring you up on the screen. Hold on. There you go.
There it is. Each individually numbered, double strike with luster. We've decided to stop giving away. We were getting low, and I don't trust making more that I can get them in time. So as of Sunday night is the last chance to get your Ruta coin with a subscription to the private road or renewal. And then on Monday morning, we are going to be giving away Theta Fuel that we load on a paper wallet, so everybody who has no idea what's going on with cryptos can get your hands on some cryptos. We've done this before. We gave away 100 Theta at one point for a subscription. Now that's worth what, $600. So these giveaways usually take care of the membership. It's $2.99 for a year, less than $1 a day. So yeah, get your Ruta coins, and I love those. And then I'll be talking with Mr. SCHECTMAN about how to sell Ruta coins in the future. And I know you guys are working on a 10-ounce bar thing. I would love to do a Ruta bar as well.
And coins too. The bar machine is first. The coins are coming towards the end of the year, and I would love nothing more. I love both of you guys dearly, like brothers. Nothing more than to pump out BeyondMystic and Road to Ruta products. It would be my greatest honor of all, and honest to God, I mean that.
I'm looking forward to that as well. And you should have seen the response from our audience the last time we mentioned it. It was like, yes, give me 5, give me 10. I want 10 bars. So I'm like, all right, we can't produce them fast enough. But let me just go back to this. This is the link, guys, to subscribe to Road to Ruta, the private road, to get that silver coin. Let me bring that down into the live chat for you guys as well. And let me see here. Okay, yes, that worked. And Andy, okay, so just remind me here also, there's a lot of people who are just coming up on the realization here of this huge Ponzi scheme, and as they're panicking to own right now already into crypto, can you explain what you have for them in terms of the how-to videos, how to get theta, how to stake your theta here on also on the private road? Can you explain what you have for them also to help them out?
Yeah,
he meant you, not me.
Yeah, I know he meant me.
Did I say Andy? I meant Bix.
No, I want to hear Andy explain it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's too high up there to explain.
Yeah, the private road. I got the Jenny Moonstone discussion. She's an amazing, gifted card reader, intuitive, you name it. She's contacted Moonstone, and her metal is definitely silver from the moon. And we've got some amazing readings on there for the private road members. We've got instructional videos on how to buy, store, and stake Theta and Theta Fuel, and those are two cryptos that really aren't traded in the United States for a specific reason. What reason is that? Maybe I think it's because it would just be too big. It's way too big. It is the future of the internet. Broadband expansion is a gigantic problem. So if you're worried about the government coming in to stop cryptos, they would never, ever, ever in a million years stop Theta, because Theta is going to help them get everybody connected in this new world we're headed into. So on the private road, we teach you how to buy, store, and stake Theta Fuel, and soon the coming T-Drop. T-Drop comes out, I think, in February, which is another token related to NFTs. If you're into those, Theta is going to be a monster player in that world as well. So yeah, come on by. And there's a lot of other stuff that, look in the archives, because that's where I get kicked out of all the social media. Apparently, I haven't been, saying what they want me to say lately. So I might be gone for a while. Yeah.
Really? What's going on? All right, folks. Well, there you go. And on that note, let me bring this up, and what Bix is alluding there to, with all of this censorship. This is why Janine and I put up this coupon code also for the Insider Access Pass. The coupon code is Stay Connected in one word, and that'll give you 10% off. Again, we don't know if we'll get booted off of YouTube for what we're saying, but at least there we control our own private server, and you'll have access to the whole library, not just the Beyond Crypto Woo reports, but everything else we're putting out there. And there's just so much content there, and we just keep adding to it. And of course, in these troubling times, it's nice to stay in community and have access to all of this information. So folks, that was this time it's different with Andy SCHECTMAN and BIX WEIR. Thank you so much, both of you gentlemen, for being on the show. Thank you so much for all your time, your wisdom, your research, and your contribution to mankind. I love you guys. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you soon, everyone. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Au revoir.